From the 22 News Plus studio, this is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of InFocus. I'm your host, Patrick Berry. We are talking politics again today. I'm very honored today to be joined across the desk by the Massachusetts State Representative for the 1st Hampshire District, Miss Lindsay Sabadosa. Miss Sabadosa, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for inviting me here. It's a
So
pleasure.
you and I have never had a chance to sit down and chit chat, and this is my first question to every elected official that sits in that chair.
Okay.
Why? Why run for office? And again, I feel like I'm repeating this, and viewers who watch this regularly know. With today's contentious political environment, why did you seek this seat?
Because I think that you can still make a difference on state government. Before I ran for office, I had been involved locally in many different endeavors, and it felt like, yes, the federal government is extremely contentious. I don't think there's anybody who doubts that, no matter which side of the aisle you're sitting on. But at the state level, it's not like that. It's not as contentious. I mean, certainly we disagree. We all disagree, right?
Is that because it's a one-party system, for lack of a better description?
I mean, there are people all across the political spectrum, right? Even if they're Democrats, there are people who I think if they were in other states would probably be considered Republicans. And there are people on the far, far left of the Democratic Party. And then we have people who run as Republicans. And we try to find consensus because it is our job to be stable. It is our job to be responsible. And it's our job to actually deliver for our constituents. And I've really felt that that was the sweet spot. Federal government felt really intense, and municipal politics just didn't have the same ability to enact policy. I have a lot of respect for their work, but I really felt like state level was the sweet spot, and I still feel that way.
As I've had more and more of these conversations, I tend to feel, me personally, I don't know about anyone else, because Massachusetts is one of the most educated states in the union, that there's a level of civility that kind of takes place maybe here in Massachusetts that we don't see in other locations around the country in state government. It's just because, as we know, the education leads to a better lifestyle and better lives for people. So I feel that just because we are who we are, there's more civility. But then also, to my earlier point, it's one-party system here in Massachusetts, except for those random Republicans.
Right. Although, again, I mean, there are Democrats who are very far to the left to me, and there are people who are further, to the right. So, but I don't know. I've never thought about that. If it's education that leads to that in Massachusetts,
That could be way off base. I don't know.
It's an interesting theory. There's probably someone out there listening who says, "I should research that now." So maybe.
So I do want to ask you a little bit about one of the committees you're on. I have to read this because it's a mouthful. A committee on municipalities and regional government.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of committees out in the State House. This one I've never heard of.
Yeah, so this is a committee that actually does a lot of work, and it's a committee that I had asked to be on because
You asked to be on
I
this
asked to
one.
be on
Okay.
it because I really wanted to understand the nuts and bolts of getting a bill passed. And this is a committee where a lot of bills come in and they do get passed because we're dealing with, first of all, a lot of home rule petitions for communities. So City of Northampton, for example, which is a city that I represent, when they want to do something that carves out an exception for them within state law, they have to file a petition with the legislature. And this is the committee where that goes. Anything that deals with those smaller local issues. So you really get an understanding of what the communities across the state are looking at when it comes to policy and how a bill comes before a committee, how we analyze it, make changes, how we vet it with different different offices of the administration, and how we move it forward for vote. So I really appreciate it because it is really the nuts and bolts of the Commonwealth.
I have to imagine you learn a lot about the 351 cities and towns across the Commonwealth just by being on that committee.
Things that you'd never imagine, right? So like the question of double polling, which is not a huge issue.
Double polling?
Yes, when a utility company replaces a pole and they leave the old one up. You would not imagine how contentious that is in a lot of communities. Communities are absolutely furious that the utilities don't come back and remove the pole, and they want to impose fines, and they want to they get very, very upset. And that is a huge issue that's come before the committee. But we also deal with, for example, there might be a piece of land on a dock in Hull where there's currently a restaurant, but it's city owned, and you need to change the way the lease conditions work. And that is a home rule petition that comes before the legislature. And so we really get to understand what everybody's district looks like. And almost everybody comes before the committee at some point. So you really get to know your colleagues.
We're going to have you back just to talk about double polling because you blew me away with that. I'm trying to get my head around why that's an issue. But again, we'll come back to that. But so you really do learn a lot of, whether it's Hull, Charlestown, Pittsfield, Fitchburg, whatever it is.
Every single one of those communities, sooner or later, has a matter before that committee. And it's great because we get to see their municipal officials. We get to talk with their Department of Public Works or their planning department, whoever it is. We've had people, because now you can zoom into the committees, zoom in from Nantucket. Turns out that sometimes when the connection isn't good, it can be hard to testify like that. But, I think it's important because you talked about civility, right? There's civility when you know your colleagues, like when they're not just your enemies, but you understand them, their priorities, and the communities that they represent. And municipalities is a great committee for that.
When were you first elected?
I was first elected in 2019.
So not that long ago.
Not that long ago.
And it's been going well?
I hope so. You'd have to ask my constituents, but they're the ones that get to decide.
What did you do before seeking elected office?
So before I sought elected office, I actually worked as a translator. I worked as a legal and financial translator from French and Italian into English.
I should have brought you with me to Italy last summer.
Anytime, just let me know. But I did a lot of work, a lot of legal work. And so it actually has dovetailed nicely and given me a lot of experience. But the truth is, in the legislature, everyone comes from a different background. We've had doctors, we've had engineers, we had people who worked in planning departments, we've had people who've served on select boards. And I think when we all come around the table to talk, those backgrounds really influence the policy. And I think it helps us be better legislators.
That's a great way to go to our first commercial break. We're going to take a moment, but we'll be back in just a few with Representative Lindsay Sabadosa. I almost called you a senator there for a second. We'll be right back.
Please don't.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of InFocus. I'm your host, Patrick Berry. Sitting across the desk from me today is State Representative Lindsay Sabadosa. She is from the 1st Hampshire District, which is there's a map you can see right there on your screen. Everywhere from up in the northwest, from Plainfield all the way down to the southeast and Northampton and all those beautiful hill towns in between.
Truly beautiful hill towns, yes.
They are beautiful towns
really
up there.
are.
Chesterfield, they're all gorgeous. Folks, if you've never had a chance to take a drive out there, just please do it. They're gorgeous.
Chesterfield General Store. If you're in Chesterfield, stop at the Chesterfield
Gorge
General
is right
Store.
there.
Head to the Gorge. It's wonderful. I will say one of my favorite stories is I posted a picture when I was doing office hours in West Hampton and State House News Service, the news service that we all get in the State House. They texted me and they're like, "Is that real? Like, is that from the Gilmore Girls? Is that a real place in Massachusetts?" And I'm like, "Of course it is. It is truly this beautiful.
The world exists beyond 495.
I know." And West Hampton has this incredible fall fair, and I was like, "You should come." They do a pumpkin roll. They make homemade soup. It is the best. I absolutely love my district. Every town has something special.
Absolutely, absolutely. I do want to switch gears a little bit. Because last summer, I forget the timing on it, 2025, 2024, I forget. There was, and again, I'm going to read my notes here. You had a concern with grocery stores, their surveillance and their advertising practices.
So actually around surveillance pricing in grocery stores.
So walk me through this.
Sure. So this is a pretty new concept. And most people, you go to the grocery store and you see the little tags, right, in Massachusetts that show the price. And they show what the unit price is and they show the bulk price. And those tags have always just been paper. And we have lots and lots of regulations around them. You have to have a certain color to make sure that it's clear for shoppers. I know that this, for me, it was the same. I had never thought about it, but now when you go to the grocery store tonight, you will think about these tags.
Absolutely.
But now those are changing because by regulation, we are allowing electronic prices. So it doesn't have to be an employee who's back there removing the paper and putting the new price in or changing. If there's a different product on the shelves, it can be done electronically. And one of the things that my staff had spent a lot of time researching was what this looks like in other states as these regulations are changing here. And one of the things we found is that there are grocery stores, larger ones, not our little local ones, but larger ones across the country that have started this idea of surveillance pricing. So surveillance pricing means that the price is different depending on who is shopping. So go ahead. I see the question.
Oh,
Yes.
I have 100 of them. The price is different depending on who's shopping.
Yes.
So, but how does it know? You and I walk up the same aisle.
Yep.
I might pay one price. You might pay a different price.
That's what the surveillance part means. So it's
How's it possible?
surveilling who is shopping. So this can be done. So surveillance pricing is literally you might have different buying practices than I do, right? So the example I used in the hearing for this bill, which has actually moved through committee and is now at the final step towards passage, is maybe I have 3 kids, right? So if I walk up to buy eggs, likelihood is I'm going to buy eggs no matter what the cost is because I have 3 kids and they like eggs for breakfast, right? But maybe you live by yourself and you don't care if you're going to buy eggs that morning. Maybe you'll just have sausage. Maybe you'll buy a donut. So the grocery store is not incentivized to give me a discount on eggs because I'm going to buy those every time I go in, and they know it. You, however, if you walk up to the eggs, it makes more sense to give you a discount because maybe they need to convince you. Maybe there are too many eggs. Eggs is probably a bad example in this case, but whatever it might be.
Rice-A-Roni.
Yeah. They have more of an incentive to give you that discount. Now, that's what surveillance pricing entails, changing the price based on who is shopping. And it can be done by maybe you get a coupon when you go up to that machine that I don't get because they know what our shopping practices are. But there are lots of ways. And this sounds, and people have said this to me, this sounds so sci-fi. That can't possibly happen.
Exactly.
Except that it is. And it's happening in different states across the country. These programs have been piloted. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that it doesn't come to Massachusetts.
So you and I walk up the same, or we go in the same grocery store.
Yep.
And again, I want to clarify, this is not happening in Massachusetts.
So this is not happening in stores right now, but we'll get to another example that is happening in Massachusetts.
Okay. So you and I, we make a plan. We say, all right, we're going to go into a grocery store. We have the exact same list.
Yes.
We're going to buy the exact same things. We could come out paying 2 different prices.
Exactly. And where this is already happening in Massachusetts is for people who are shopping online. So there was research that just came out. They put 5 people in a room. They gave them the same shopping list and they had them use Instacart. All 5 people were charged different prices for the same shopping list.
Now I can see why that's an issue.
Yes.
Why? Again, I go back to the old days. You walk down the aisle. Oh, eggs are $1.99 a carton.
Exactly.
I'm dating myself with $1.99 a carton. But anyway.
That's a lovely price. I wish that's what they were.
But and orange juice is $2.99. And, Rice-A-Roni is 99 cents, whatever it might be.
Yep.
But now it changes based on who walks by.
Yeah. And I
That's
will say,
mind-boggling.
there are really positive ways that this could be used. But the problem is that we don't actually have any data privacy laws in Massachusetts. We have very, very few of those. And so your data can be used in all kinds of ways. And the United States as a whole doesn't have strong data privacy laws. So whereas in Europe, people are using surveillance pricing to say, hey, this product is going to expire, we want to lower the price and we're going to continue to do that. They're not doing it based on who's buying, they're doing it for everybody. Here, however, without protections, it is really based on who the shopper is, and that can lead to a lot of problems and more expensive groceries.
That is mind-boggling. I had no idea that even existed. I'm glad I brought it up. So which committee are you on that is facing this issue?
So I'm actually not on the committee that's facing this issue. This legislation went through a committee called Advanced Technologies, and they deal with all of the things that are facing the Commonwealth, whether it be AI or surveillance pricing. There's also surge pricing, robotics. They deal with everything like that. And we file lots of legislation that does not necessarily come through a committee on which we sit. There are many committees. I'm on municipalities, as you said, but healthcare financing, transportation, and luckily I am on Ways and Means. So at the end of the day, I do get to see a lot of the bills that come through that committee before final passage.
I know there's a lot of frustration over pricing things. Specifically, I know of it in concert tickets, sports tickets, or whatever. It's what do they call it? Demand pricing or whatever.
Surge pricing, yes.
Surge pricing.
Yes.
it's gotten ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't know who's getting the cheap tickets, but by the time the average person gets online to buy a ticket, it's astronomical.
I know. I mean, we have the Super Bowl coming up, right?
Yeah.
And I think what they've said that the face value was maybe 500 as
Yeah,
the cheapest ticket,
sure.
but you can't find that,
No.
right? It's 4,000 at a minimum.
Right.
And this is, I think, something that's frustrating consumers, things that, I don't know, we can date ourselves a little bit more, but when, one went to a concert at the Meadows, you could go for $20. You can't do that anymore. And it is taking away, I think, joy of life for
Absolutely.
a lot of people.
Yeah. We are up on our second commercial break. Please stay with us. We've got plenty more to talk about.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of In Focus. We're here in the 22 News Plus studios. Sitting across the desk from me, representing the 1st Hampshire District at the Massachusetts State House, is Representative Lindsay Sabadosa. Ms. Sabadosa, thank you for joining me. Appreciate your time. We've covered a lot of ground. You have really blown my mind with double polling, grocery stores, surveillance, and so forth. One of the hottest topics here in Western Massachusetts is the growth of rail,
Yes.
of moving people by train.
Yep.
I lived in New York City for more than a dozen years. The idea of getting on a train, to me, is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You just get on the train, you go from A to B. I don't understand why it's so hard to do that here in Massachusetts. I had Meredith Schlesinger on here to talk about it. So she was able to educate me a considerable amount. But I know rail is one of your hot points.
Absolutely.
Why do you find rail so important?
So I'm going to,
And bearing in mind we only have 6 more minutes.
okay, I'm going to start from the heart.
Okay.
Because I think there is something, kind of like you said, the ability to just get on a train and go somewhere makes so much sense, right? Like there is something about communities being connected that is really
And how
important.
nice would it be for you just to get on a train and end up at South Station?
Can't even tell you how nice it would be.
And driving.
There are times where I will drive to Worcester and then take the train in.
Okay.
And the commuter rail takes about an hour and a half from Worcester, which in traffic is about the same as driving.
And it's about an hour from
less.
here to Worcester.
Yeah,
to get to the train.
So it's, a 2.5-hour drive, which is pretty much my commute in rush hour. And then it's a nice walk, right? Once you get off at South Station. So I do appreciate that you get work done. You feel less stressed. You feel human coming in, which is not what you feel like when you've sat in traffic for 2.5 hours. And we know that traffic is only getting worse into the city. But, I will say in Northampton, we are lucky. We do have rail already. We have the Valley Flyer, which connects us up to White River Junction and then down to New York City and all points south. And it's been really fun to watch that project because it was, it had been in the works for a long, long time. There had been some trains, but the Valley Flyer, right when I got elected, it was that moment where they were, there's going to be 3 trains. They were really pushing it out. We started with a project to advertise that service. And there were a lot of naysayers in the community, like no one's going to take it. It's expensive. Wouldn't you just drive to Springfield and park? It's cheaper to park in Springfield. All true. And the train sells out all the time. And ridership just keeps going up and up and up and up.
Wow.
And the times where you are standing at that platform in Northampton and you just see the line of people waiting to get on the train, like, no, this is what people actually want. They want the ability to just go downtown and hop on the train. So, I mean, for me, this has consistently been a no-brainer. Now, you've had the director of Rail and Transit on, so starting train service is not easy. It is not something that just a state can do on its own. It requires collaboration with the federal government. It requires far more funding.
Again, it's one of those, it's not as easy as everybody thinks it is.
It's not. And, right now in Massachusetts, we are sharing tracks with freight. And there is definitely a contingency that says, well, we should just prioritize passenger rail. I would remind people that actually freight trains are great. It keeps trucks off of our highways. They're really necessary to moving goods
Think about
around.
how much people are shopping online now. It all comes somehow.
It all comes somehow. That's the service that gets things across the country. And so we have to balance those priorities. They are important to balance. But, East West Rail is coming.
Right.
And I think
hopefully I see it in my lifetime.
Well, you're going to see it in your lifetime. I certainly hope so, because the plan is for the next few years. Let's put it that way. I certainly hope that we're both around.
Do you see part of my foresight with rail is it helps every community there's a stop.
It does.
And
But it helps the
economically, everything.
surrounding communities too, because then all of a sudden there's this hub that you can go to and you have an ability to travel to places that you might have decided not to otherwise. And I think that what we're going to see with East West Rail, just like we saw with the Valley Flyer, is people are going to say, it'll be expensive. It's going to take a long time. It's not as fast as I want. But people are still going to take the train.
Right.
And that is important. I mean, we say this all the time, even with buses. People complain there's not enough bus service. We have to take the bus because we don't put out service if no one's taking it, right? And I think with trains, people have said this is something that we want. People love going overseas and taking the train. They love when they can just sit there and get their work done and, not find a rest area because there's a bathroom on the train. Like it's so much more convenient. Your kids can run around as opposed to sitting. It is really, I think, it was the way of the past, and I think it's the way of the future.
I would go to Boston much more frequently than I do now if I could just if I live in Westfield, if they converted the old train station in Westfield to a commuter rail or whatever it might be, or even drive to downtown Springfield. Be easier going to Red Sox games, Bruins games, Celtics games, going out, going to the museums, a show, pick it.
Yes.
It would just be so much more convenient. But it's good to hear that another one of our state legislators is on that same track.
I think that most of us are. There are very few people who are in Massachusetts right now saying, trains, we don't want that. I mean, we've really, as a delegation, come together and we meet regularly with MassDOT. We keep pushing them. We keep saying, how can we support this? What can we do? And luckily, we have a federal delegation that is doing the exact same thing right now. And it's, become a little bit harder. The current administration in the White House is not super pro trains, but at the same time, we've continued to apply for grants and we've done the work and we'll keep doing it. But we expect trains to be running in the near future, and I cannot wait to get on one.
We've only got about a minute and a half left, and I'm going to have to ask you to bring your answer in. But
all right,
when it comes to ICE, Immigration Custom, I even forget what the acronym stands for.
That's okay. I think everybody knows.
I mean.
Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Your Northampton,
yes,
because it is a very blue community.
Yes.
I have to imagine our current federal administration is going to target Massachusetts and Northampton. Are you fearful that we might see a greater presence of ICE agents in our communities?
So what we've seen with ICE in Massachusetts thus far is that they are targeting primarily communities where there are a lot of immigrants. So we've seen increased presence in Chelsea and Brockton and Revere. We have seen some ICE in presence in Northampton. We do not have a huge immigrant community. That said, I can tell you that it is probably one of the top two issues that I hear about from my constituents. There's an enormous amount of concern about limiting what ICE can do in Massachusetts. We've all seen what's happening in Minnesota, and there's a lot of fear. So the legislature is working very hard on legislation to make sure that our residents are protected and that immigrant communities feel safe, because at the end of the day, we want to remain a welcoming state, and I believe that we will.
A great way to end it. Representative Sabadosa, thank you so very much for joining me today. A fantastic conversation. Double polling. You're coming back for that one. Good seeing you.
Thank you.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.